Croeso and welcome to Cardiff Referee Society's meeting with Lee Waters.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. As you say, it's really good to see things out there on social media and things like that as to moving things within the field. And I hope everyone is safe and well at this present moment in time. But welcome to a session that is ultimately geared towards enhancing our decision making through training of the eyes. I'm not quite sure if anyone does that at this present moment in time, if anyone actually thought about training the eyes when trying to enhance decision making. It's not necessarily a common thing at this present moment in time, but it is an emerging topic. So for the next half hour or so, we're going to talk about what the importance of decision making is, what actually is decision making, because people talk about it, people ask about it, but then they don't necessarily define it as well as what they probably could do. We're going to differentiate between eyesight and vision, and we're going to go through some methods of training for it. I've got some activities for you to do, for you to engage in, just to prove points and just to kind of have a go at this process. First and foremost, though, those of you that don't know who is randomly talking to you at this present moment in time, my name is obviously Lee Waters. I'm a PhD candidate. I'm moving into my fourth year of my PhD now, so hopefully only about a year to go, and then we'll have my full PhD in decision making, looking at the underlying mechanisms of decision making in football officials. So my PhD is all geared towards football officials. I'm a higher education sports psychology lecturer. I've been so for about 10 years. And I'm a performance psychologist within football. I've worked with GB archery, GB water polo, basketball, and athletics as well. So I've got a little bit of experience within the field, but specifically I look at it from a decision-making perspective. Just wanted to set the scene a little. I'm aware that you had Stuart Carrington not so long ago, so that will be quite nice, because I know some of the stuff that he talks about, so he would have talked about some of the bits that I'm going to use right now. But it's well regarded that the intensity of football is significantly increased, especially in the last 15 to 20 years or so. The average distance has increased by the players by about 30%. And the number of sprints is increased by about 85%. And the passing rates has increased by 40%. And this has led to an increase of about 2-3% every year of the amount of decisions that a football official is having to make on a football pitch. So it's approximately about 245 game-related decisions. That works out about one decision every 22 seconds. When you start to break those numbers down, you start to realize, wow, decision-making from a football official's perspective. Now notice that it says game-related decisions. That's not taking into account changing of direction. That's not taking into account, oh, I need to sprint now. That's not taking into account, oh, there's someone running across me and I need to stop. So there's a variety of different things that you need to think about. So with this, we are looking at what actually decision making is. And it is the preferred series of actions or chosen action that is chosen from amongst the alternatives, okay, in a given scenario. So what is the preferred action in a set of alternatives? Now, arguably, the most important psychological process we go through. So we go through them every day. We make thousands of them every day. Right now, you're deciding whether you are going to pay attention to me or not. You are going to be looking around potentially. You've made decisions from eating today to training potentially, and there's lots of things that you are going through. Making decisions can have the far-reaching effects in terms of success and failure. So it can determine whether you are successful or you become ultimately a failure in something. It is through decisions that we're able to demonstrate our abilities, and also an indicator of how we can develop in the future. Now, think about this though, we are experiencing the most stimulating period of human history. We've got laptops, we've got smartphones, we've got all kinds of things going on around us, and we're being bombarded with pieces of information. On a football pitch, we have got so many things that we need to think about, whether that be the players from the opposition, from one team to the other, the coaches, what are they shouting? The crowd, are they shouting anything? All kinds of things are going on within a football game. But the importance of decisions is consistently acknowledged. But it's just about the clarification of what they are that we need to discuss. And we're going to discuss that for the next 20, 25 minutes or so. So how do we make them? How do we make decisions? And this is a complex process, but it is something that is relatively straightforward to understand. We have lots of stimuli, lots of information, and typically that is from both the environment, so external perspectives, and from an internal perspective. We have lots of things going on around us. We have objects, we have patterns, things that are going on, internal things such as memories, emotions, experiences, past experiences. All of these things get thrown into the mix when making a decision. It is ultimately a skill, though, to go through both of those things and make a decision based on the information that you have. So it is a skill to what's known to discard what's known as irrelevant pieces of information, but hold on to the relevant pieces of information moving forward. So it's typically the pace or the speed at which the scenario you are faced with that dictates how quick you've got to make a decision. Now, I said before, football is getting quicker at all levels. It's shown in all levels, making 245 plus decisions per game. So football is a very quick game. Okay, it's not as quick as basketball, but it is a very quick game all the same. Okay, so this is something that we need to consider. So let's have a go. Let's have a go at try and making some decisions here. Now, what's going to fly up onto your screen is a grid, and it's full of numbers. Now, all I want you to do is consciously look at the numbers and try and get to as high a number as you positively can. Now, the numbers are in 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, and you just need to find the next number in the grid, okay? So 0, 0 is in the left-hand side, and you then need to find 0, 1, find 0, 2, find 0, 3, okay? It's a novel activity. I'm very well aware of that, but I'm just trying to prove a point at this present moment in time. So it's going to come up onto the screen. I'm going to minimize this thumbnail so everyone can see the whole screen. And there you go. You've got 1 minute to get to as high as you possibly can. That's it. Just simply go through a process of trying to get from 0.5 to 0.6 to 0.7 to 0.8. Try and find them as you go through. You've had 30 seconds already. $15 seconds to go. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and stop there. Okay, so random exercise to do. I fully appreciate that. But all I want you to do is just, if you don't mind sharing, you can take your computers off mute. If you don't mind sharing, be honest. Get to what number did you get to?
I only managed 8.
Okay.
I got to 13.
13, wicked.
I got the 5, but 03 is obscured by the picture-in-picture.
I do
It took me a while to get around. I had to turn my phone around the other way.
Sorry about that.
Excuses, Sean.
Well, that's just happens to be true, this one.
We got 11 from Teggett and 7 from Connor.
Excellent. Okay, so the point is that with this exercise, we're all faced with the same pieces of information. We've all been presented with a grid. Okay, Sean, I do apologise. Part of the grid was obscure for you, so you had a different obstacle to contend with. But we're all faced typically with the same piece of information, but there are different numbers that people were getting. Now, the reason for that typically is our ability to be able to focus on the relevant pieces of information or discarding the irrelevant. So let me go through some of the tactics that potentially some of you may have employed for this. So some of you may have split the grid in half and scanned one half and then scanned the other. Some of you may have gone through rows. Some of you may have gone down in columns to look for the next number. Some of you may have looked for the 0 to start off with. So 0, oh, okay, is that the next number, etc., etc. Point is that you're trying to come up with a strategy, a pattern, a search pattern in order to find the next piece of relevant information. Okay. Now, what does this have anything to do with decision making? I want you to start to consider this. General physical fitness, if you are trying to improve your speed, your flexibility, your endurance, just answer the question, how much training do you do for those? How much training do you do dedicated to physical fitness, dedicated to flexibility, dedicated to endurance? No one really likes flexibility training, so I'll take that one on the chin, but it's just trying to have a conversation here. Keeping up to date with the laws of the game, very, very important as well. So it's really, really an important part of officiating. Should be as important for players, by the way, but that's something to consider. How much time do you dedicate to spend reading on the latest rules and applications? Making decisions is also incredibly important from an official's perspective. Now, to make a decision, you need information. I've just given you that kind of a little novel activity for that with the grid. You need information to make the next decision. Upwards of 90% of that information we gain, though, comes from our eyes. Up to 90% of that information comes from our eyes. So how much training do you dedicate specifically to eye training? And it's an interesting point, because if you think about that, you need to improve your speed. You typically may want to spend some time on your hamstrings, for example, because they dictate your velocity. But how much time is dedicated to eye training, despite the fact that it is shown multiple times that they are pivotal to improving your decision making? Now, there is a difference between eyesight and vision, and they're used interchangeably, and they shouldn't be, because they are distinctly different. Our eyesight is simply being able to see something clearly, and we've all been for eye tests. We've all been to the opticians, and we've all gone and hoped that we're going to get this 20/20 vision eyesight as we come out of it. Typically, it's the hardware that we're talking about here, the eyes, how clearly we can see something. Vision, on the other hand, completely happens in the brain. It's our interpretation of what we see in front of us. It's our interpretation of the environment that we see. When you were going through that grid, you were able to interpret that what was in front of you was a set of numbers. That's the vision part. That's not eyesight, that's vision. You're interpreting the numbers. What is really important, and I'm going to get you to do another thing right now, is something called binocular vision. And what we need to do is make sure that people are using both eyes equally in order to work efficiently. Now, I've got a little thing for you to do, and I don't know if you can see it. A picture's just popped up onto your screen. What I would like you to do is to put your hands out in front of you and create a triangle. Okay, so put hands out in front of you, try and create a triangle like this. Okay, put them up into the air and pick a point on the wall that is approximately, I don't know, 10 feet away from you, but you can target on the wall. Ideally, it's a clock. Ideally, it's a door handle or something like that. And all I want you to do is to try and make sure that that object is in the middle of the triangle with both eyes open at this present moment in time. Now, when you have done that, what I want you to do is to close your left eye. Okay, so just close your left eye. Now, what happens to that object that you have placed into the middle of the triangle? Does it move left or right? Does it go completely out of the triangle itself? Open your left eye and then close your right eye. Once again, does the target move? Does it go completely out of the triangle? What happens? Okay. So, some of you may have got to the point where when you close your left eye, the target is still completely in dead center of the triangle. And that is perfectly fine. If you open your left eye and then you close your right eye, you may all of a sudden no longer see the target, whatever it may have been. It may have been a light switch or whatever, okay? If that is the case, then that means that you are right eye dominant. So if you close your left eye and you can quite happily see the target still dead center of the triangle, you are right eye dominant. If you close your right eye and the target is dead center of the triangle, that means you're left eye dominant, okay? If it doesn't move at all, it means that you're binocular, and that's fantastic, and that's what we're trying to get to here. That's what we want to happen. The reason this becomes a really big issue is because if you're not what's called binocular, you start to have issues with other things such as judging distances, depth perception, pacing, and things like that. As you start to go through a game and you start to become more and more fatigued, your brain becomes more fatigued. Now remember, vision happens in the brain. The brain cannot correct this issue that we're having with the hardware. All of a sudden, it's like your computer has started to become a little bit slow. It's not able to compute as well as it used to be able to because it's getting too fatigued. Put in another way, it's like tracking in a car, tracking of your wheels. If you're going down, if you're going down the road and you're tracking slightly out, you're going to start to veer off a little. It's not going to be as smooth and as true as it was done. Okay, so these are important points to consider when we're looking at eyesight training. So some of the things that I've done so far within my research, within my field of work, is I work with what's known as eye tracker technology. Now, these pictures here are some of the outputs, the basic output that you would get from an eye tracker system. Now, this cursor here, you can see exactly what a person is looking at when making a decision. So my research orientates around offsides. What are people looking at in order to make an offside decision? Now, interestingly, this person seems to be looking into the sky. This offside decision was proven correct in this scenario. So in order to make a decision on an offside decision, I could start to suggest, well, actually, yeah, you just look at the sky. That, don't worry, I'm not gonna start promoting that. What the eye tracker system does, it shows us what they're looking at, but it doesn't show us what the interpretation that they're doing. So that needs the conversation behind it. Why are they doing what they are doing? So in this scenario, what was happening was this person was doing something what's called gaze anchoring. He was finding a point where he could see both pieces of information that he wanted to see. He wanted to see the ball, the attacking player on the ball, and he wanted to see the last defender. And then he could see everything in between through his peripheral vision. That was the action that he took. That was the skill. That was the strategy that he employed. So he did something called gaze anchoring. This official, however, took a different tact. They wanted to be more to the last defender. That was what their point of contact was. They would go from the last defender to the attacker, but quickly back to the last defender again. Last defender was their main area of interest. They would quickly go to the attacker when the ball moved, and then they would go back to the last defender. Now, funnily enough, both of these strategies had a high percentage of success. They were over 95% successful in their offside decisions when they were doing it this way. Okay, so it's interesting to note of that. But as I say, with this eye tracker technology, we're able to see exactly where people are looking, through it. So this is someone wearing it here, one of my research participants. And as you can see, it's just an easy piece of kit that can just be easily worn along with it, okay? The technology is even better now in terms of you no longer have to wear this backpack, which used to look like a Ghostbuster, but now you can all you have to do is wear a mobile phone and then hook that up to your belt, and you don't even have to wear the backpack. So it's a really, really good piece of kit. So this is the interesting part from the eye tracker technology. This is going through and testing depth perception, and these are interesting. This is the activity that you've just done in terms of the binocular vision. These are interesting pieces of equipment called synoptic strobe goggles. Now, what these do are literally glasses that you put onto your eyes. And they are kind of like strobe goggles that black out information really rapidly. And you are able to, then you have to filter the pieces of information that you pick up. So you have to use the information quicker.
And this is designed to take away visual information that's getting to your brain, so that when you take away the strobe, then with that efficiency, you see the world in a different way. This also induces sensory re-rating so that you're less dependent on your visual information and more dependent on your proprioceptive and somatosensory information.
And all it does is literally, it's just flicking in front of your eyes to pick up the information. Now, once again, with the training that I'm doing with some officials now, is that, well, prior to lockdown, they were wearing these, and they were trying to use them to enhance their ability to pick a piece of information. Okay. Now, unfortunately, we can't do these activities. I'd love to be able to hook you up to some eye trackers and love to hook you up with these synaptic strobe goggles and try and train you and go through it, okay? Right now, we can't. Maybe for a later date, for a training session, possibly we would be able to, but right now we can't. But it's just to give you an insight into the research field that is really, really important right now, seeing what people are specifically looking at and then training them to enhance their processes. But what we can do at this present moment in time is different ways to try and enhance people's ability to see things quickly. Now, here's just another novel way of being able to do that, okay? So what's going to happen is there's going to be some numbers that are going to flash up on the screen. All I want you to do is just make a mental note. I'm not expecting you to write anything down, but there's going to be some numbers that flash up on the screen. I just want you to make a mental note of what the number is, because it's only going to be quick, okay? But the point is that there's going to be information, interpret it, make a decision, okay? So here we go. Okay, so as quickly as you can, interpret the piece of information that's being flashed out. Now, if you think in a game situation, this is happening all the time. You're being flashed with pieces of information, and you're then having to interpret it, and then you're having to make a decision based upon it. Now, what we found when we went back after lockdown from lockdown 1 was that this skill was significantly lacking. Okay, this skill of visual searching, of interpretation, was significantly lacking in both players and in officials. That was where we were, from where we were anyway. Okay, so little activities like this is something to try and help people enhance that. Okay, and as you get the point, so all that happens is just simple little activity to try and enhance people's ability to see things. Now, what we were talking about before was something called brain endurance training. Now, I'm not going to get you to do these, by the way. So all of a sudden, you've just had sums come up onto your screen. I'm not going to try and get you to do these. But what we are trying to get our officials and our players to do is get to a point of fatigue and then have to do something with it. So they're having to get physically fatigued, but then they have to go and engage in a cognitive skill. Okay, so something is simple arithmetic like this. All of you will be looking at that and thinking, this is really straightforward maths. If they can't answer these, wow, they haven't done a very good job in their math lessons. Okay, but when you start to become fatigued, these cognitive skills start to fail you. And that's something that we're trying to enhance during this lockdown and make sure that they're not forgetting or they're still working on the cognitive element. What we have here, sorry, just skipped a screen, is testing what's known as depth perception. Okay, so a quick test would be if you stick your finger out straight in front of you, between you and the circle that is on the screen. And then what I want you to do is to focus on the circle on the screen and then focus onto your finger. Focus on the circle and then focus on the finger. Now, what we're trying to do here is for you to try and flip between something that's relatively close to something that is relatively far away. Now, the idea is within a game, you are having to do that all of the time. You're having to watch a player that potentially is a few feet away from you, but then quickly the ball's been transferred over to the other side of the pitch and you're having to watch the ball and quickly go, and your vision has to go to the other side of the pitch. Now, once again, this is a skill. By definition, skills need to be trained, skills need to be learned, and they can be forgotten. They can start to wane if they're not practiced. So this is something that I'm trying to get people to do as well. So the depth perception is maintained. Now, I've just got you to think about something that's only an arm's length away. Now you can start to be quite clever with this and do other things around the house. So things that are a bit further away, looking at signs and then looking at something that's further away than the sign, and so on and so forth. But the ultimate, the thing is that we're trying to do here is to try and make sure that you're flipping between something that's close and something that's far away. Now, finally, last kind of tips really for training the eyes and the eye muscles is strengthening the eye muscles can do a lot to enhance your decision making. You can use them to enhance your depth perception. If you are a little bit not quite binocular, you can start to train your eyes to become more centered in its vision. it's just as vital as training the hamstrings, the quads, etc., when you're doing your speed training. So something as simple as hanging, I know it's a really random thing to suggest, but hanging a balloon or a ball from a ceiling or from something that is up above your head, making it move and watching it going left and right, just using your eyes though, not moving your head, just tracking it with your eyes, left and right, up and down potentially. These are moving your muscles on both sides of your eyes, and they are getting used to being used again in some capacity. Hold a pencil at an arm's length and then move it further away and closer to your eyes. So once again, you're having to think about where that thing is and when you're trying to track it. Now, those of you that have done anything to do with concussion, for example, notice that some of these are quite similar to the tests that you do for that. Can they track a moving object? So you can get them to try and track the finger and things like that. Okay, so there's something that's quite similar along those lines. Rolling your eyes. I know potentially other significant others and other halves will tell you not to roll your eyes, but I'm actually directly telling you to roll your eyes because it can actually be quite a good activity for you to get you to do. Once again, head stationary, but rolling the eyes round, trying to get them to be moving and strengthening those muscles as you kind of go through. And then the other activity could simply be watching TV, but at a half turn. So you're kind of looking at the TV at your peripheral vision. But the idea would be is to then slowly move away from the TV. So then it's pretty much at a right angle away from you. But the idea would be for you to try and pick up as much information as you can using your peripheral vision. Ideally, in this situation, when I've got people to do this before, we've tried to get them to watch football games and things like that. But if there's not been football games on, obviously there's the Liverpool-Tottenham game on right now. But if there's not one on, you can watch your favorite show as to what's going on and try and outline what's happening. Okay. But these are just 4 very, very simple ideas that could really help you enhance your vision, enhance your eyesight, and ultimately, because of the fact that we need information in order to make decisions, this can really, really help you. And this is just some of the commentary from some players and some officials that have used these kind of things. So the goggles, some of them have actually really liked them, some of them have not. Being perfectly honest, when they first started, they took a while to get used to them, but they saw the point in them. The testing forced them to really start thinking about the information that they actually use, things like that. Some people are not necessarily aware how complex decision making can be and how important the eyes are with it. But I hope this has been in kind of like a whistle-stop tour of introducing this concept and giving you an insight into where it's going in terms of the eye tracking, in terms of the synoptic strobe goggles and things like that. But just because we're not able to use the technology at this present moment in time doesn't mean you can't still train it, because it would be something that will vitally help you in your officiating moving forward. And that's me. So we've highlighted decision making, we've gone through eyesight, we've gone through vision, and we've gone through a few insights into how training can help you. Have any questions that I could possibly answer, or have I bored you enough?
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Lee. We've put some questions in the chat, so I can read some out to you. And then if anyone else wants to ask a question, they can unmute their mic and we go from there. So the first question is, does the AR, assistant referee performance, improve significantly, or at any point after doing the training with the eyes?
Yeah, so that's the million dollar question. Does it improve significantly? It definitely improves. It definitely improves their training or their approach to decision making. It's whether it. I don't know whether you've used the word significantly purposely because you are into science or into research at this point. But from a research perspective, I'm reluctant to say significantly at this point because it's not research driven at this point. I've got lots of case studies. I've got lots of case studies to say it does. But statistically, I don't have a significant difference at this present moment in time.
So in that case, then, so if you were to look at the like the anecdotal, at the end of the training, the person who's walked into the situation, gives some decisions, and then they've come back, then done the training, and they've gone back. What kind of comments have they said then as a result of doing the training?
Yeah, so it's actually one, they didn't. So if they've used the eye tracker, for example, one, they didn't actually realize. Some of them didn't actually realize they had a skill or a specific pattern that they used or search pattern that they endorsed. So some of them didn't realize that. So it really consciously made them think about that in the next phase of the training. So when they were going through that, their performance actually starts to become less efficient because they are now consciously thinking about something that they didn't realize existed. But then the outcome of that, so when they've gone through the training and then they go to be tested again, they ultimately become better at what they were before because they become more efficient at the process that they were doing. So like at the examples that I gave you earlier of saying, well, okay, so some people were anchoring at a certain point, and that was just one example of the sky, but some people had anchored when they get to a certain point in the pitch. They like to anchor at the 18-yard box, or they like to anchor at the base of the center circle and things like that. Some people like to anchor on if there's a crowd, or if there's a railing on the opposite side of the pitch, they like to anchor there. So they try that, and they become more efficient at their search strategies, meaning that they pick up the right information, and then they become more efficient at the decision making. But once again, I'm reluctant to say significantly better because I don't have the data to categorically say that at this present moment in time. But anecdotally, yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. There's a question or a statement from Sean. So regarding performance, that from his own, he's found it difficult, depth perception difficult under lights.
Under lights.
Under lights, under floodlights.
Yeah, it's one of the an area that's typically to do with obviously the lighting in the given situation. The little exercises that I gave you before will help you with that. They will definitely help you with that, because what you're trying to do is then work the intricacy part, the small parts of your eyes to try and enhance that depth perception. That's a common thing. It's not something that you should be going, oh my God, it's weird. It's not normal. It's a common thing to be under the lights and not being able to have an efficient depth perception. It happens with players. Some players can't play as well under the lights. As much as they may enjoy it a little bit better, some players can't play it, and it's typically because of that. But the exercises that we did at the end, they will help with that.
And with the you talk about anchoring of the eye. So is it a case of anchoring your eyes and then you're moving your eyes rather than moving your head back and forth?
Yeah. So typically what is happening at that point, you pick a point that you always go back to. Okay. So you can move your head and you can move your eyes, but you're going back to that point each time. So like I said before, one person preferred to look at the last defender. They would quickly look at where the ball was, but then they would go straight back to the last defender. They would quickly look where the ball was, but then they would go straight back to the last defender. So the anchor is a place that you always go back to, but it doesn't mean you don't move it else. It doesn't mean that you move it elsewhere to pick up other information. That's just the place that you're quite happy with. It's like doing a squat potentially, and you're going into a neutral position. That anchor becomes your neutral position.
Okay, thank you. And you know, I had a comment. Well, it happened to me one time that when I was as an assistant referee, that it was a case of I was looking where the ball was being played, and then by the time I've looked at a player, they've gone through, and I thought, oh, offside. But when I reviewed it, it was by the time it was at that lag time of me coming up and looking, then I realised then that oh no, I've missed it. He was onside. So so yeah, it's trying to get that point where you can see both things at the same time. And
yeah, it's also I mean, I don't know obviously the specific incidents that you're talking about, but quite often one of the reported the most difficult offside to try and judge is when a defender is pushing up and then the attacker is running in the opposite direction, and then there's a crossover between the two when the ball is played. So within our terms, that's called a flash lag effect, and trying to make sure that you are tracking those pieces of information, because as they come towards you, you're wondering where that's going on, and that's where this kind of stuff really starts to help with that, because that's a lot to do with tracking, search patterns, depth perception, binocular vision, things like that. If you improve those, that flash lag effect shouldn't have as much of it shouldn't be as much of an issue consistently.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? You can unmute your mics.
Just one. I was just wondering about, we do have, a couple of referees that wear glasses. And whether you had done any work on that, and whether these exercises are beneficial under those kind of situations.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to speak ill of the likes of Specsavers and things like that, because they have made a multi-billion-dollar industry on selling glasses and things like that. But to a certain extent, and I'm not saying that eyesight can be completely repaired, but to a certain extent, if you engage in eye exercises, your eyesight and vision can be repaired to a certain level. I'm not saying that you could completely get rid of glasses, but you potentially would start to you increase your vision score. Okay, so I have done some work with that, and that has actually happened. So people have improved their eyesight and have improved their vision. I wear glasses. I actually wear glasses myself, but it's something that I actually have made myself do as well in terms of the eye exercises, and I've actually improved my eyesight as well. So once again, I'm a case study for myself, but it does help.
Okay. We got a couple that wear them in the game itself, so I just kind of wondered. Certainly, I wear glasses for reading, as you're possibly aware right now. But I do find that when I'm running about, my eyesight improves enough to be able to write and read what I've written. So there is a little bit in that also, I found.
Yeah, absolutely, because the right lots of chemicals being sent around the bodies makes the brain more alert. Exercise, physical activity does incredible wonders for our body and brain. So that's one of the things that you will encounter.
Yeah.
Okay. I was also going to say that you talked about the endurance. There's an old saying that the chairman, who's not present at the moment, you would say that you've got like the witching hour in a game. So the last 10 minutes of the game is where the fatigue is got in, not for yourself as a referee, but also the players as well. And that's where all the most decisions tend to happen, or the key matching instance tend to happen in the last 10 minutes. So there's no real training for that, as in you've got to be there and you've got to be alert ready for that. So have you looked at, when you're looking at your drills, when you're improving, testing people doing the offside, do you see it from, is there like the decision making improves, or does it deteriorate over time?
So initially, there's from the stats that we do have so far, is that the first few minutes the decisions aren't as accurate as what they do become during the middle phase of the research project. So while they're during the exercise that we're collecting the data, and then towards the end they will start to have less effective decisions as well. So that mirrors a game. So that's why the way in which we've done the research mirrors a game situation. So typically what does happen is that the first few minutes aren't as accurate. There's a period of time for probably about 12 minutes, 13 minutes within the research in this scenario that it's mainly accurate, and then towards the back end of the period of time that they're doing it, it's not as accurate. So this witching hour that you've mentioned is replicated within this research as well. You say there's no way of training that. I'd argue that there is, in the sense that put simply, you're fatigued at that given point. Bring yourself to the point of fatigue, and then have to do cognitive exercises.
Right.
So you could get to the point where you are having to run. You could, when we're out of lockdown, let's give an example, you could get them to run a significant amount, get them for 5 minutes, get them to a point of fatigue, and then put them into a linesman position, and then having to make offside decisions at that given point, and things like that. So you would have to still make the cognitive decisions, but from a point of fatigue, as you kind of go through.
Right. Yeah. And have you looked at referees' perspective as well, as to because like with referees, you tend to get yourself in a position where you can make the right decision. Have you looked at how this can be applied with referees as well?
Yeah. So the technology before lockdown, the technology that was available to us was only the Ghostbuster version. So it was having to wear a backpack on you with you, and we deemed that it wasn't safe for people to be running around at that given point with as a referee running around with players and things like that. But now, because the technology is much more efficient, much more streamlined, you're barely wearing anything in regards to technology. It's much more portable. And actually what's happened now with the technology we have now is players are now using it. And there was a study that was recently released from Denmark, I believe, who actually attached it to football players during a friendly match to analyze what they looked at when they were passing balls short and long. So if it's good enough for players to be able to wear, then it would be more than safe for an official to wear. Right. But in answer to your question, I specifically haven't looked at it from the man in the middle's perspective. No, I've just looked at it from an assistant referee's perspective.
Okay, so I think we've exhausted all the questions. So thank you again, Lee, for giving us input. And I'm hoping that I'll certainly pass this presentation on to the referees manager. And hopefully we can get a one-to-one, or not a one-to-one session, but like a session in which we can try some of the products and start to think differently about how we can actually improve as referees and assistant referees. So so thank you for giving up your time, and hopefully I'll be in contact shortly.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been useful to everyone, and I haven't bored you too much.
No, okay. And
thanks, Lee.
Yeah, I'll say to everyone that the Lee's on Twitter, so you can follow Lee on Twitter and find out more about his research.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye now.